Taoiseach, I'm not sure if you answered, but maybe you did. Just you can repeat it if you did. But about the committee that will meet before the summer recess, and I want to argue that it is very, very important that the Housing Committee meets before the summer recess to tackle a number of things. One of them is the one I've mentioned to you, because it's a very serious issue, that the criteria, the eligibility criteria for cost rental do not align. And for huge numbers of the people who are applying for that, who are supposed to be in the cohort affected, they are being told you can't even apply. Right? This is crazy. But the second thing I want to ask you is for that committee to also look at the income thresholds for social housing and therefore for HAP. Okay? If you go on Daft right now at the moment, in Cherrywood, the biggest residential development in the country, you won't find anything less than €2,600 a month. The HAP threshold is 1,950 homeless HAP, right? And you have to be homeless to get that rate. It's much lower. In other words, the new housing that is coming on stream in most of Dublin is totally unaffordable to anybody, right? Except the big investors who can go and buy it up.
Thanks, Deputy. Something
has to be done as a matter of urgency to ensure that there's some options for people. Because otherwise the number of people who are going into homelessness is just going to grow, and increasingly it's working people with jobs, kids, and so on, who pay their taxes, and they are being forced into homelessness because there's no options for them.
Thank you, Deputy.
Questions. The number of people sleeping rough in Dublin, it's things at the last count was it in around 100 or just below 100. I don't know what the discrepancy is between the Simon Community count and the DRHE count. I will ask that question myself. It might relate to the time of night it's done. It might also relate to whether it's done on a single night or over an average number of nights, which of course will be much more accurate than a single night. But I do want to say that emergency accommodation is available in Dublin for anybody who needs it. That mightn't always be true, but it's generally true, and it is important to bear in mind that a large number of people who are sleeping rough are offered shelter, but choose for various complex reasons not to avail of it, and that needs to be taken into account as well. Just in relation to bidding for major sporting events, which Deputy Dillon raised, we will give consideration to a central body. It is very much a cross-government effort. It's not just about the Department of Sport, it's a tourism issue as well. You have to know whether the accommodation will be available and whether you're just displacing other accommodation. There's issues around travel and access to ports and airports. There's justice issues because you need policing, and then there's also capital investment, and that comes with finance and deeper costs. So it does need to be a cross-government effort. The only thing I would say, having been involved in some of the bids, successful and unsuccessful, and they are very different. There's a world of a difference between looking for the Ryder Cup to looking for a stage of the Giro d'Italia, to looking for the Volvo Ocean Race, to looking for a major soccer or rugby tournament. They're so totally different beasts that sometimes a central body mightn't be what you need. It's a bespoke body depending on the type of bid that you're making. The Housing Committee, Cabinet Subcommittee will of course meet again before the summer recess. And as I mentioned earlier, the cost rental and social housing income limits are kept under review and have been revised upwards in the past, and I'm sure will be again, but I can't say when at this stage. But just to be clear to deputies, while the Dáil and Shanna go into recess, the government doesn't. Government meetings will continue throughout July, as will Cabinet Subcommittee meetings, and will happen in September as well. There might be a 3 or 4 week break in August where there aren't any, but will certainly continue to operate even while the Dáil's in recess. Finally, on the housing adaptation grants, I understand there has been an increase in funding for this, but if more is needed, well then I think we should allocate more. I certainly don't want to see a situation whereby people are stuck in hospital because adaptations can't be made to their homes, and that's not right. And it's also a false economy because the cost of somebody in a hospital bed when they don't need to be there means that huge numbers of other people don't get into the hospital or don't get the treatment they need, and there's a false economy there. So I'll talk to Minister Bryan about that, and if local authorities need additional funding, for housing adaptation grants through the course this year. You know, unless it's a massive amount of money, I'm sure we'll be able to find it.